Hi, so today I'm going to be covering some of the things I learned going through one of Vishen Lakhiani's courses on bending reality. So this is actually a free bonus you get when you sign up for his conscious engineering product. And so I tried it out, and it's basically just some videos he recorded at Awesomeness Fest, and he's sharing those to cover some things. So if you don't know about Vishen Lakhiani and MindValley, definitely go check them out. They've got a lot of great products. He's got a great vision and really inspiring to listen to. So there's a lot of free stuff on YouTube. You can catch some of the stuff I'm about to cover. But basically, this talk or this product is about questioning the systems and models that we have, or the lack of models we have for dealing with the mental challenges and things we have to grow up with in life. So he starts out saying, we have these systems and models for dealing with physical reality. For example, you brush your teeth every day, twice a day to stop your teeth falling out. So we have very good sort of systems and models for these physical things with our health and fitness. Obviously, people are getting much better at that, figuring that out. But the mental models and systems are very outdated, and we're often not even aware of where some of these things have come from. So he talks about these, for him he calls it rules, which is bullshit rules you pick up. And these are these things that's passed on by conditioning. So it could be through your culture, through your religion, through your parents, through whatever you grew up with. And they can often be things that are very outdated and don't serve you. And so one example he gives is with Hinduism and the fact that Hindus aren't allowed to eat beef. So he was raised in a Hindu family, and when McDonald's opened up, he wanted to know, why couldn't he eat beef? And it was quite funny. He had this discussion with his parents, and his parents didn't really know either. They just said, we're Hindus, we don't eat cows. And so he did the research, and he found out, obviously, a long time ago, cows had a lot of uses, and you could get the milk, you could get them to plow the land, and so you wouldn't want to kill them because it's a very useful animal. But that doesn't really apply in today's society. There's no reason why you shouldn't eat meat if you feel it's good for you. So obviously, I don't eat McDonald's, but the takeaway here is just the rule that was in his head or in his family's head that stopped him eating meat. And when you start to question these rules, you really break them down. I think the strongest ones are religion, obviously, but also things we have about nationality, this way of dividing ourselves as people when we're all just one human race. But we have these rules about, ways of dividing ourselves by our social class, by our race, by our gender, all sorts of things we just make up and the society puts in your head. And so you need to question which ones don't serve you, which ones you need to smash. And obviously rules about your potential and your self-limiting beliefs that hold you back. There's a lot of rules we have about that probably pick up from our parents. Another example he gave was that success is hard work, and that's one rule that nearly cost him his business because he thought he had to work really long hours in order to have success, but that's just a mentality he picked up from his father, who had a really busy export-import business and had to work long hours and basically almost collapsed from the stress of his business. So he grew up with that mental model. He got that rule from his dad. It was even subconscious, just by seeing his dad, how he worked. And so when he tried to cut back to spend more time with his family, his business started stagnating and collapsing, and he had to figure out why is this happening. And the rule, he broke it down. He found out the rule that was holding him back was this bullshit rule that you have to work really hard, like 60, 70, 80 hours a week to have success. So he worked through that, and now he's able to have he's breaking his records without being in the office all the time. And so that's really inspiring. I think a lot of entrepreneurs get caught up in that trap, and we think we have to work insanely hard. And the truth is it's not necessarily true. It depends what your goals are, because if you're trying to be a billionaire, you probably have to devote all your energy in life, and maybe you neglect some other areas of your life, like your health and your family. So a lot of super successful people do have those traits of being maybe unbalanced, but I think that you can decide what you want from life, and you make sure you set goals in all areas of your life, so you're not neglecting other areas. And this kind of touches on something I did in Tai Lopez's course, where he talks about having balanced life, and successful people don't always have a balanced life. But I think you can decide what's important to you, where you want to set goals, and then make sure you're very clear on why you're doing different things in different parts of your life. Your health is one thing you can't neglect. Your family, your marriage, those things you have to make work in the long term. So so that's interesting. You need to look at these rules and what you're thinking. Does it really serve you? Definitely doesn't serve. It doesn't serve me to think I need to work so long in my business to have success. But I think it's good to know that you probably do need to have focus, and so it's definitely a balance there. But there's an interesting rule I need to think about. So he talks about different rules, and then he breaks down this other trap that people fall into. Is this happiness and vision is the two things you really need to be have this feeling of success and progress. So when you don't have happiness or vision, you're depressed because you feel out of control. Like there's no there's no control of your destiny. So that's the worst state to be in. And then if you have happiness but no vision, you're kind of satisfied with what you have. You fall into this current reality trap where you're not trying to grow and learn and evolve. So that can be a place that people get stuck. And then the next one is where you have vision but no happiness, and so you have all these things you want to achieve, but you're not happy now, and so you get a lot of stress and anxiety because you're not sure how you're going to get there. And this is kind of linked to this thing he calls the reverse gap. So this is a problem a lot of entrepreneurs and successful people get stuck in, is that they set a goal, they're here, and they set a goal for here, and they tell themselves, I'm going to be happy when I reach this goal. But as soon as you reach that goal, you set the next goal. And so you always have this gap between where you are and your goal, and you always tell yourself you're going to be happy, but as soon as you reach it, you move the goal. So there's always this gap of happiness, and you're not happy now. And so when you have that vision, but you don't know how to be happy in the now, you're not fulfilled, you're not satisfied. And there's a lot of successful people, rich people, that have a lot of money, but they always have this problem. So this is something to think about, and he talks about how you can fix that. One way is to have a reverse gap, so not just looking forward ahead of where your goal is and where you want to be, but look 2 or 3 years behind where you were and where you've come since, and how much you've learned, how much you've grown. And that kind of appreciation and gratitude for how much you have achieved is a way of kind of balancing that out. So that's kind of a useful hack. You can do that in your meditation or something, to have that gratitude and appreciation for everything you have in your life and where you've come from. So that's a way of overcoming that problem of having the vision but no happiness. And then when you do have the happiness and vision, that's like the ultimate state where you have you're in flow. You feel like you're being pulled forward by big goals, but you're able to be happy in the now. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge for me to learn, and for other entrepreneurs as well to learn, is finding that mix of happiness in the now and also having a powerful vision that pulls you forward. I kind of veer between the two. I think some days I have a lot of vision, but I forget my happiness and I get stressed about it, or I'm super happy but I'm not focused. And so I guess it's a daily practice to put your mind in the right frame of mind to get that feeling. So he talks about what things can you do. So this reverse gap is one example. What sort of embodiment practices can you do to put yourself in that state? And that's what he calls blissipline, is that, I guess, that ultimate flow state. So you can do that through different things like meditation, visualization, intention setting, and gratitude. So that's all things I've tried, and I guess I've struggled to find a way to integrate it into one system and keep it consistent without it taking up so much time. And forgetting to do it, if it's not a consistent practice. So the one thing I found was really good is this app. It's actually put out by MindValley. It's called Omvana. So they have it for, I think, the iPhone at least. And you can download this app, and basically it has all these free tracks for meditation, happiness, focus, all these things. But the one that is most useful for this one is the 6-phase meditation. It's actually a free one that Vision puts out. So it's basically a 20-minute audio. You can listen to it every day. It's what I've been doing. And it goes through all these things. It goes through the visualization, the intention setting, the gratitude, the appreciation, and it's just a way to set yourself up for each day to really put yourself in that state of discipline. And then if you need to you can do it 2 or 3 times a day to pull you back into that state. It depends how stressed out your life is, how much you need to come back to center. So yeah, it's really good. I've been trying it out. I used to do meditation, just a silent meditation, but I found it wasn't very effective because some days I'd just get pulled all over the place and my thoughts would just be all over the place, and I wasn't really getting the peace of mind and that focus I wanted at the start of the day. So I've been doing this for a few days, almost a week now, and I feel the difference already. So I think guided meditation is better for some people. You've got to just try it out and see if it works for you. But I do it first thing in the morning, and it just sets up my day to feel much better for the whole day. So definitely want to try that app out if you haven't tried it, to do all those things. It runs through all those embodiment practices. And basically having that positive expectancy puts you in the flow state. So then you're starting out your day feeling amazing, and you can carry that through the rest of your day. So that's a bit about some systems. And then in terms of the models, he talks about some alternate models for how we can view ourselves and view life. So is some things like intuition, energy redirection, reservoirs and ceilings, and connectedness. So it might sound a little bit woo-woo. I mean, some of this stuff I've come across before, going through other people's books, and he talks about these. So I want to cover them quickly. I think it's it's not necessarily like with intuition, for example. He says you don't need to understand how it works to be able to use it, and so that's the most important thing. We all want to understand everything scientifically and logically and rationally, but some things we can't understand, and science just isn't ahead of everything. So you just need to go with it. You need to see and experiment and test if it works for you. So he references this book. I think it's a very famous guy, Napoleon Hill. He wrote Think and Grow Rich, but there's another book he called The Science of Getting Rich that he wrote, and this was a study on successful people and their habits. And what he found, I think he went to all these people, talked to them, interviewed them. He found that all the really successful people had this way of tapping in to a way of thinking that was normal people didn't do, and so that Vishen thinks that's intuition. That's what we call intuition. Steve Jobs also, it's mentioned in his biography, he was very keen on understanding how intuition could work, and that's where you get great ideas and great insight. And there's ways to trigger that. So the one thing is, if you don't believe it, it's very unlikely, it's very hard, it's going to work for you. But if you read about other people's experiences, then that can help you understand it better. You believe it's possible for them, then it's possible for you. And so that's a way of making it stronger in your life. And Vishen himself had a lot of success in one of the sales roles he had before he started his company, where he was using intuition to work out who to call, what to say. And I think good salespeople have this. They kind of know what to say at the right time, and it's just like a feeling, and it's hard to explain. Richard Branson says, he talked with Vishen, and he says he knows in 60 seconds whether he can trust someone just by shaking their hand, and so that's how he chooses who to work with. And he's got 300 different business partners for all his businesses that he runs, and he can't explain how he does that. So it's a really useful skill. Really successful people are using it, and you don't even need to know why or how it works. You just need to try it out for yourself. So he recommends some books for reading about that to understand it better. You can look at the course. Some of the books are The Field by Limit Taggart, Holographic Universe, Psychic Warrior, Best Evidence, and Conscious Universe. So these are just different studies by scientists and journalists looking at US-funded research into this, and some of the things that are scientists looking at a scientific basis for how it works. Even though they can't explain why, there's some very interesting conclusions, and you can make your own mind up. So I would say don't rule it out. At least just read the books and see if it makes sense to you, and read some biographies as well. Maybe people like Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, and see how they've inspired the world and changed the world, and use intuition to really have a lot of success in their life. So that's one of the alternate models, is using intuition. For me, I think I question my intuition. I think we all do that. Sometimes you get a feeling in your gut and you kind of overrule it, and every time I've done that, it's not always been the best result. So sometimes you try and use an analytical mind to think through something, and that you override your instinct or your intuition. But you got to be careful with that, because it doesn't always work out the way you want it to. So with intuition, I feel like I need to be more open to it and maybe trust it more before I can let it have more powerful influence in my life. The next alternate model he covers is energy redirection. So this is kind of how you view or how you frame a problem, and how much energy you spend and time you spend caught up in something. So for example, one thing he says is, when shit happens, what do you do? And most people, there's like three things that could happen. First thing is you get frustrated, and you just swear at it or whatever, you're upset about it, and that doesn't really fix the problem. And it uses up a lot of energy. So that's a very common way people express their frustration when something bad happens. And the second one is they try and find things to fix. So they look around, what can I change? What can I do? I think that's useful, but again, it's maybe not as powerful as the third one. And the third one I really like. This is something I'm going to try and remind myself every day, because the third one is you create a vision that makes the old problem obsolete. So you look at what caused the problem and what can you create that's going to make the old problem not even a problem anymore. So instead of blowing this problem up and making such a big deal and taking up a lot of energy and thought in your life, you look at what can you create that's going to be something just massively, bigger than the problem, and suddenly your problem is obsolete. So one really interesting example he gives is this problem he had with his business in 2010. MindValley actually shrunk, the revenue shrunk because Google changed their algorithm with how they ranked websites, and so lots of websites and businesses were getting this Google slap. And I had this challenge in my business as well when I was just starting out, that Google were changing the algorithm for the search engines a lot, and what that meant is that suddenly all your traffic disappears because your website disappears. And so Vishen was having these weekly calls and meetings with his team how to avoid the Google slap, and they're always looking at the problem and thinking, how do we fix it? How do we fix it? What's the problem? And so this is the classic way people look at it. They get frustrated and try and find a way to fix it. but they found that even though they would put up a new website, try a new strategy, it would just get slapped again and slapped again. And so I don't know how Vishen kind of figured this out, but one day he decided, we're not going to have any more meetings on how to avoid Google slap. We're going to have meetings on how can we become a Google case study. So this is basically the vision for something that's much bigger that makes your problem obsolete. And if you think about how to become a Google case study, you're no longer worrying about avoiding a Google slap. So it's just a real shift in intention and where your focus is onto something that's much bigger. So I think a lot of times my business, I'm always focusing on the problem, how to fix it, and not necessarily on what would be bigger, what would be better, that suddenly makes this problem not go away and not even seem important at all anymore. And so he said within 2 months of setting that change and shift from focusing on avoiding, fixing the problem and avoiding it to setting this bigger vision of becoming a Google case study, within 2 months he said that Google contacted him. He met a Google rep at some tech conference. Then he worked out how to fix the problem. Google contacted him and actually came down and filmed in his office to do a case study on how to brand your business, how to run online successfully. So that's just crazy in terms of the shift in the outcome just by changing the shift in your thinking. So that's a great model. I think that you always want to think about what's the vision you can create to make that problem obsolete. And problems aren't really bad things because they can draw your attention to a solution that can help a lot of people. So so again, if you view a problem as a bad thing, you're not seeing the flip side to that, which is the opportunity that comes, the challenge of fixing that. There's a massive opportunity for other people because you're probably not the only person having that problem. So that's an interesting way to always view things as two sides to it. It's not always a negative thing, but you can get a lot out of it and you can help a lot of people. And obviously, adding value to people you're gonna get rewarded for that. So that's one alternate model. And then the other one is also people starting out with the classic thing they start out with is how am I going to get something, when am I going to get it, when they're setting goals or whatever, looking into the future. How am I going to get something, when am I going to get it, the why do I want it, and then what is it I need to do to get there. So they're starting out, that's the classic way, and he says to reverse that. So you start out with what do you want. And again, I guess that's creating a vision, right? It's looking at that vision you want. First of all, what do you want? Why do you want it? Because the why is very powerful to make your focus strong and pull you forward. You need really strong whys for how you're going to help people, how you're going to improve your life. And then you think about when and how, but you don't worry about the when and how at the beginning. You have faith that you can achieve something even without knowing how you're going to get there. And so this is kind of the positive expectancy again. It comes back to that previous point. When you have positive expectancy, you kind of get into that flow state where you have big goals and you pull forward, you believe in them, but you're happy in the now. So if you think about the how and the when, you're caught up in the details, and maybe that's telling the universe you don't believe it's going to happen. So again, it's a little bit woo-woo, but it's an interesting way to think about it. Whereas if you create this vision of what you want and why you want, then you'll figure out the details and you'll move down a path. It won't always be the path that you think. And he says, for example, he doesn't set business plans anymore because that's exactly the opposite. That's focusing on the how and the when. But really, you want to start from the opposite, which is the what and the why. And having a powerful enough vision and a powerful enough why is going to drive you forward, and that's going to really be the thing that pushes you forward and to success. So I thought that's a very interesting model. I thought that's really powerful. There's a lot of things I can apply that to in my own life. Another one he talks about is your reservoir of faith and the possibility ceilings. So this is how much belief you have in the goals you're setting, because if you don't have big beliefs and you set big goals, you're going to set yourself up for failure because you're going to sabotage yourself. Maybe you'll just avoid that. You don't believe you're capable of it. So we all have this ceiling of possibility that we think what we're capable of doing, and it's based on our confidence, and that's based on success. So when you have some small success, you build up big success. Like when I started a business, I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but now that my business is running pretty successfully, I'm thinking, this part is easy, and now I'm looking to the next challenge, and your reservoir of faith builds up and your confidence builds up, so your possibility of what's possible also increases. So success builds that, and maybe that's one really good way of doing it, is just to start with small successes and build on those. The other thing he talks about is to read biographies, because that can really stretch your imagination of what's possible when you read other really successful people who've done amazing things. And people like Sam Walton, he mentions his autobiography, Steve Jobs, these people. When you read what they've done and you look at how they did it, it gives you a lot more belief that these guys can do it, and it's possible for me to do it as well. So it just stretches your ceiling of what you think is possible, and your reservoir of faith as well. And that's another way to do that, is to hang out and talk with really successful people. So go to conferences, go to seminars, try and hang out with successful people, go to chambers of commerce, hang out with business people, spend your time around these people, and they will. It's like the law of hanging out with people, or you're the success of the average of the 5 people you spend your most time around. So if you're hanging around really powerful people, successful people, they're going to pull you up, and your reservoir of faith will increase. Your possibility of what you think is possible, that will also increase. And so that's one of his tips for how you overcome those barriers. And then the last one he mentions is connectedness. So this one I like because he says that we're all connected. Obviously, we're all part of the human species, but we have all these things that divide us. So instead of pledging your allegiance to your country or your race or your ethnicity and seeing us versus them, or you versus them, as separate people, how can you connect humanity? How can you push the human race forward? And what's your noble mission to contribute to the world? So it's really just thinking a lot bigger. Steve Jobs had a great quote. One of the poems he published was about pushing the human race forward. So that's what entrepreneurs do, and that's the difference between entrepreneurs and businessmen. Businessmen are just doing it for the money and for the dollars, but entrepreneurs want to actually push the human race forward. So that's really powerful. You think about what is your mission, and have a big enough what, and then why you have that mission, to make it really powerful and clear to focus on. You need to think about how you can contribute to humanity and push the human race forward. For me, that's something I've been spending more time on recently because I've had more time to think about it. And I think that I've had a lot of success in my life, and it's come through a lot of pain, and so maybe I've learned slower than I need to. I think the way I could contribute to humanity would be to teach people the things I've learned with how to market businesses so they can launch their own businesses and to be more successful online. So Vision gives some examples of how he's done that. He says you can never do wrong by doing the world good. And so one example was when MindValley was looking at people to bring on to publish courses. They had so many people coming with ideas, they couldn't process all these people and all these ideas, so they were rejecting a lot of people, and they thought, well, we don't need to monopolize the market, we can help these people put their own ideas out there. So they actually started giving away a lot of tips on how to publish your own products for other people to become entrepreneurs through their own platforms. And he was told, people told him he was crazy, you're going to lose a lot of money, why are you giving all this away for free? And how it turned out is that basically they started doing entrepreneurship training through the MindValley Insights, and that became their highest percentage profit margin source of revenue in their company. So they started out doing something completely without the idea of how to make money from it, just to try and help people grow more, and it turned into something, a huge amount of revenue for them. So that's just an example. He says you can never go wrong by doing the world good. And then they have this Hall of Awesomeness where they give free training at their office in KL. So now they've done that, they attract all these these really bright minds, these cool people with cool ideas, and they're able to partner with them and invest with them. So that's really inspiring, because you don't think about how I'm going to monetize this, but you think about what can I do that's going to make the world better, and the success comes with that when you have a big enough mission and focus. So my mission and focus is going to be something big. I need to think bigger, and I need to surround myself with more inspiring people to stretch my my ceiling of possibility and what I think is possible. That's one thing I'm going to really focus on, and I'm going to put that into my 6-8 meditation. When you talk about one of the parts of the meditation is you look at how your future is going to unfold in front of you. 3 years ahead, how do you want your future to unfold? So you need to start thinking about how I'm going to meet the right people, who's going to inspire me, and start to follow these people and start to surround yourself with that kind of thinking and those kind of successful people. So he says, that's connectedness is a really important part, a really important model to think about, and that will just blow up your success. If you're thinking, how can I help 1 million people or 1 billion people, suddenly your opportunity, your market is much bigger than if it's just thinking about yourself or your a very small, limited vision, because that's just going to shrink your possibilities. So that's most of the course. He talks about entrepreneurship is not really a goal; it's a side effect of having goals. So you don't think I want to be an entrepreneur. You think, what can I do to contribute to humanity on a bigger scale, and how I'm going to do that, and why am I going to do that, and the how and the when will come to. So he also shares one more tip from Richard Branson. He asked Richard Branson on his island, what's your number one tip for success? And Richard Branson says, hire people smarter than you, get out of their way and trust them. And the most important thing is you have to make them see their work as a mission. So even in your business, you have to have employees that are really empowered and inspired, that they are doing it more than just for the job and for the money, because that's not that's not going to really grow things, and it's not people aren't going to be passionate about what they do. But if you're working with your friends on a mission that you really believe in, you're going to be a lot more engaged in your work and a lot more focused, and you're just going to get the best out of people that way. So I think for me that's been one of the challenges, is hiring good people, and I've been kind of afraid to take that step of how do I hire people, because I don't know what model to use, and the model that I saw in corporate life was horrible. So I've just kind of avoided hiring people and trying to do things as much as possible myself. I do outsource a lot of stuff, but I don't have any full-time employees because of that reason. So I think that this is something I want to focus on, is first of all getting intuition to hire the right people, and then having a good system for trusting them, and hiring people smarter than you. I guess that's a good one, because then you can really trust them that they're going to perform at a level that's acceptable to you. But they need to see the work as a mission, so you need to have a framework for them to be able to grow as well. They're not just going to be stuck in something, because they're not going to be motivated, or long term they're not going to be passionate and focused as you are on the work. So that's some of the things from the course. This is Bending Reality again. I would definitely recommend checking it out. If you buy the consciousness engineering and then you don't finish the checkout, that's an abandoned cart. So what happens is after I think a week of that, they'll send you another link to a page, and that will have the link to the Bending Reality as a bonus. So that's like a hidden bonus if you don't buy the course straight away. Otherwise, just buy it. I mean, it's not going to cost much, but yeah, it's a really good course. Got a lot out of it, and I'm definitely going to look through some of the other materials in the course and be back to cover those. So hope that was useful, and we'll talk soon.